Okay, so it seems like these days, just everywhere you look, someone's always got some like secret new trick for living longer.
Oh, yeah.
And I gotta admit, some of it sounds really impressive, like especially when you see, all the Silicon Valley bigwigs, like guys like Bezos and Thiel and Larry Page, throwing just billions of dollars into this anti-aging research.
Right.
It does kind of feel like we're like right on the edge of discovering some, high-tech fountain of youth.
Well, it's definitely a captivating thought, right? Like, who wouldn't want to unlock immortality?
Mm.
But I think what's really fascinating is when you start to look at what the science that's a bit more, grounded in reality
Oh, yeah.
is actually telling us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think the most impactful changes come from the places we least expect.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because while we're, got bombarded with all these headlines about these, cutting edge, like super expensive fixes for aging,
Hmm.
there's this other really interesting research that's been coming out that suggests there might be a much simpler way.
Hmm.
And it's something that they're calling the 15-2 half rule.
Okay.
So that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today on this deep dive.
Sounds good.
And we're going to explore the surprisingly simple rule and how just, making these small tweaks could actually mean a longer and healthier life specifically for you.
Okay.
And to do that, we're going to be looking at some expert opinions and a really cool study that was recently published in BMC Medicine.
Right.
So essentially, this 15-2 half rule boils down to just three simple things:
Okay. Let's hear it.
finding an extra 15 minutes for sleep each day,
Okay.
adding just 2 minutes of exercise into your routine,
Hmm.
and then eating an extra half serving of vegetables with your meals.
Okay, I got to say, it does sound pretty simple,
Yeah.
especially when you compare it to all the usual advice that we hear, like, aim for 150 minutes of exercise each week, or, all the really complex dietary recommendations that are out there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like 150 minutes of exercise a week, it's a huge commitment for a lot of people. It's
Yeah.
just one more thing to try and cram into an already super busy schedule.
Right. And it's understandable why so many people feel overwhelmed when they think about trying to, completely overhaul their lifestyle.
Right.
And that's actually where I think this new research offers a really refreshing new perspective.
Okay.
So this study published in BMC Medicine, it looked at a group of individuals who were already meeting, what we might consider those kind of like basic healthy lifestyle guidelines.
Yeah.
So, they were already getting at least 7 hours of sleep.
Okay.
They were doing around, 42 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity each day.
Hmm.
And they were generally following a Mediterranean-style diet.
So these are people who are already making an effort to be healthy, right? It's not like they're, starting from scratch.
Exactly. They're not living completely unhealthy lifestyles.
Right.
And what's so remarkable is that even this group, who's already doing a lot of things right, they still saw a really substantial benefit from just consistently following those basic guidelines.
Okay, so what kind of benefits are we talking about here?
Well, compared to those who weren't meeting those guidelines,
Hmm.
this group had over 60% lower risk of premature death.
Wow. Okay, so even just meeting those, baseline recommendations can really make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But now let's talk about the really interesting part, the 15-2 half aspect of it all.
Okay.
So what happened when the researchers looked at the effects of just making like really small additions on top of those, already healthy habits?
So this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So what they found was that those who managed to just add those extra 15 minutes of sleep, squeeze in that extra 2 minutes of exercise each day,
Mm-hmm.
and then just, eat a half serving more of vegetables,
Mm.
they actually experienced a really noteworthy decrease in their overall mortality risk,
Oh, wow. So like how much of a decrease are we talking
a
here?
10% reduction.
10%. That's pretty significant,
It is.
especially when you consider that it's, really just a few extra minutes here and there and just, a bit more veggies.
Yeah, one of the articles that I was reading about the study, they kind of put it perfectly. They said, yep, 15 to half equals 10% greater odds of living longer.
That's amazing. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true, but there's got to be like a reason why these small changes can have such a big impact, right?
Right. It's not just about those individual additions in isolation.
Right.
It's really about how these seemingly insignificant adjustments can actually set off a chain reaction of positive effects throughout your whole body,
Hmm.
like a kind of ripple effect of improvement.
I like that. Okay, so let's break this down a bit further. So
Okay.
first, let's talk about sleep. We all know how groggy and just off we feel after a bad night's sleep.
Right.
But it sounds like the effects go way deeper than that.
Oh, they absolutely do. The lack of sleep actually affects
Yeah.
some key hormones that play a huge role in regulating our appetite.
Okay, so let's talk about these hormones. What exactly happens when we don't get enough sleep?
So when you're sleep deprived, your body starts producing more of this hormone called ghrelin,
Ghrelin.
which is often called a hunger hormone.
Okay. And at the same time, your body reduces its production of another hormone called leptin,
Leptin.
which is the hormone that signals to your brain that you're full.
Oh, okay, so it's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
You're more hungry and your body is worse at telling you when you've had enough.
Precisely. It's like your own biology is working against you.
Wow, okay, so not only are you tired, but you're also likely to eat more, which obviously isn't great for your health in the long run.
And the effects actually go even beyond just, appetite regulation. Lack of sleep also impacts how well your body can process blood sugar.
Okay, how?
So research shows that after just a few nights of not getting enough sleep, your insulin sensitivity can actually decrease by quite a bit. Some studies have even shown a decrease as much as 30% after only 4 nights.
Wow. Okay, so for those of us who, might not be super familiar with the term insulin sensitivity, can you explain exactly what that means and why it matters so much?
Sure, so you think of insulin as like a messenger.
That helps glucose, or sugar, from your bloodstream get into your cells to be used as energy.
Okay.
Now, when you have good insulin sensitivity, it means your body needs less insulin to do its job effectively,
Yeah.
to get that glucose into the cells.
Okay.
But when your insulin sensitivity goes down, your body becomes less responsive to insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, glucose starts to build up in your blood.
And that's where the problems start.
Exactly. Over time, this can lead to weight gain, and it really increases your risk for developing type 2 diabetes,
Yeah.
heart disease, stroke, and even premature death.
So basically, consistently missing out on sleep is doing more than just making us feel tired. It's actually messing with our metabolism in some pretty serious ways.
Exactly.
Okay. But it sounds like there's also a positive side to all of this, right? Like the research also pointed to a positive feedback loop between sleep and eating habits. So how does getting more sleep actually help us make healthier food choices?
It's all about creating a virtuous cycle. So when you're consistently getting enough sleep, those hormones that we talked about, the ones that regulate your appetite and your feelings of fullness, they tend to be more balanced.
Okay.
You're less likely to get those really intense cravings, and your body's better at telling you when you've actually had enough to eat.
Hmm.
And this naturally makes it a lot easier to choose healthier foods.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're essentially working with your body's own natural systems instead of fighting against them.
I like that, working with your body. Okay, so those extra 15 minutes of sleep, they're not just about feeling a bit more rested. They can have a real impact on our eating habits as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's move on to those extra 2 minutes of exercise.
Okay.
How does that fit into this ripple effect that we've been talking about?
So physical activity and sleep quality are also really closely linked.
Okay.
For example, there was a study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine that found that people who exercise regularly, they tend to fall asleep faster.
Mm-hmm.
They sleep for longer periods.
Oh.
And they just generally experience better sleep quality overall compared to those who are less active.
Okay.
So even just those 2 extra minutes of movement can really contribute to improving your sleep,
Wow.
which then reinforces those, positive hormonal and metabolic benefits that we were just discussing.
Right, so again, it's all about these small improvements in one area kind of spilling over and creating benefits in other areas.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we've got a pretty good understanding now of why the 15-2 half rule is so powerful. But let's make this really practical, for our listeners out there. So what are some things that people can do right now, today, to start putting this into action?
So let's take each component of the rule and break it down into some really easy, actionable steps.
That's good.
So first, let's talk about the 2 extra minutes of exercise.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be anything too strenuous. You don't need to suddenly start training for a marathon or anything like that.
Right.
It's really about just finding small ways to incorporate more movement into your daily routine.
Okay, I like that.
So, for example, could you choose to take the stairs instead of the elevator a couple of times throughout the day?
Yeah.
Maybe do a quick set of push-ups, against a wall or your desk.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even just do some jumping jacks or burpees during a short break.
Yeah, those are all good ideas.
The key is just to find something simple that you can actually stick with, for those 2 minutes each day.
Makes sense. Okay, what about the half serving of vegetables?
So for this, think about where you could easily add a bit more, greens or color to your meals or snacks.
Oh, sure.
Could you throw a handful of spinach in your morning smoothie or add it to your eggs?
Yeah.
Could you maybe have some extra carrot sticks or cucumber slices with your lunch,
Mm.
or maybe just add an extra spoonful of steamed vegetables to your dinner.
Yeah, I think those are all really manageable changes that most people could easily make.
Exactly. It's all about finding sustainable ways to gradually increase your vegetable intake
Mm.
without feeling like you have to make some, radical change to your diet.
Right. Small changes add up over time.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then finally, how can someone realistically get those extra 15 minutes of sleep?
Honestly, the simplest way is usually to just shift your bedtime back by 15 minutes.
Okay.
Try going to bed just a little bit earlier than you normally do tonight and see how you feel.
Yeah, I think I could definitely do that.
You might be surprised how much of a difference that small amount of extra rest can make.
Okay, great. So to recap the 15 to half rule,
Yes,
15 extra minutes of sleep, 2 extra minutes of exercise, and a half serving of vegetables.
that's it.
It sounds incredibly simple, but as we've learned today, it's backed by some really solid research. And it could be a surprisingly effective way to live a longer, healthier life.
Exactly. And I think the most powerful aspect of this approach is that it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not about making these huge extreme changes or
Mm,
spending a ton of money on fancy gadgets or treatments.
right.
It's really about making these small, manageable adjustments that can create these big positive ripple effects on your overall health and well-being.
Yeah, I love that. So as you go about your day today, think about those 3 simple things that you can do. You know, can you find a couple extra minutes to move your body? Can you add a little more, plant power to your next meal?
Hmm.
And, maybe try setting your alarm for 15 minutes later tomorrow morning.
Or even better, try going to bed 15 minutes earlier tonight.
Yes, exactly. That's even better.
And this kind of leads to a really interesting thought that I was having.
Okay.
So we've been talking about health today,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's interesting to consider, what other seemingly small adjustments could we make in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
That might spark some unexpected positive changes in other areas as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Something we could all probably benefit from thinking about a little more.
I agree.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too.
I hope you did too, listeners, and be sure to join us next time for another deep dive into the latest health and wellness research.
See you then.